What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Paddy Pimblett eyeing return before end of year. Paddy the Baddy Pimblett has been one of the most talked about prospects since he made his UFC debut last year. On the heels of his second round submission win over Jordan Levitt earlier this year at UFC Fight Night London, Pimblett is now looking forward to making his highly anticipated return before the end of the year. During a recent appearance on the Cage Warriors 144 broadcast, Pimblett broke the news regarding his targeted return date, saying,
I'm planning on fighting December 10th, UFC 282, lad. I'm planning on fighting on that December 10th, so I'm just waiting for an opponent, lad. I'm waiting for someone to step up and sign on the dotted line. You know, everyone talks about the baddie, everyone talks about fighting me, but when the contract's in front of them, you know, they're not as confident.
The news is surprising considering the fact that Pimblett has already fought and won twice this year. Prior to his win over Jordan Levitt in July, Pimblett defeated Rodrigo Vargas via a first-round submission in March to kick off the year. With a 3-fight win streak under his belt, Pimblett can now be poised to enter the UFC's top 15 at lightweight depending on who his opponent winds up being. With no shortage of potential opponents for the brash scrapper, we can only wait and see who signs on the dotted line to step into the octagon with him. One potential matchup that has continued to get fans talking is a potential showdown with Terrence McKinney. The two streaking prospects have continued to lob insults at one another via social media and seem to be on a collision course for one another. The question is just whether the UFC matches them up right now or further down the line. Fernand Lopez reveals heated exchanges with Ali Abdelaziz over Slim Trabelsi dispute. Last month, we reported that streaking prospect Slim Trabelsi was in the midst of a bitter contract negotiation as he sought to make it to the UFC. The 4-0 prospect had been booked to fight Parker Porter at UFC 280 in Abu Dhabi later this month, replacing Hamdi Abdelwahab, who was forced out of the bout due to unspecified circumstances. Unfortunately for both Trabelsi and his opponent, a dispute with Aries Fighting Championship will prevent him from being able to compete on the card. Trabelsi has an ongoing contract with Aries, which is owned by the man who manages him and several other MMA factory fighters, Fernand Lopez. Despite the obvious conflict of interest, the partnership had gone on for quite some time until Ali Abdelaziz helped book Trabelsi for his UFC debut. When Lopez found out the streaking prospect had been booked for his UFC debut, he put a halt to things, thanks to a contract Trabelsi had signed. With no movement on either side, it seems Trabelsi is forced to remain with Aries Fighting Championship and Fernand Lopez for the time being. Despite that, Ali Abdelaziz has allegedly gotten increasingly hostile towards Lopez, according to BJPenn.com. He then told me if I didn't release him, I would hurt you. He then asked what I want to release him, and I said two things, but one thing is priceless. I want to send a message out there that anyone in my management that tries to screw me and not respect the contract won't be tolerated anymore. I've lost too many fighters. The second thing is, I want compensation, and the compensation I thought was very fair is $90,000 over someone who would make millions over Slim's entire career. With things becoming increasingly public, this feud seems far from over. Stay tuned for updates as they become available. Next up, George St-Pierre offers Israel Adesanya advice ahead of UFC 281 Grudge match. Israel Adesanya is currently in the midst of gearing up for his highly anticipated Trilogy bout with Alex Pereira at UFC 281 in New York. Ahead of the fight, it's no secret that many fans have begun to count the champ out. In fact, many of the odds makers have the bout being an incredibly close one, with the champion being just a slight favorite at the present time. Ahead of the fight, longtime UFC welterweight kingpin and UFC Hall of Famer George St-Pierre has some advice for the reigning champ. He made an appearance on Adesanya's YouTube channel, where he said,
"Yeah, bro, that's the thing. It's heavy the crown, my friend.
Oh yeah,
and it's only the beginning for you.
I love the fact that first thing he says like,
heavy that get worse. I'm honest with you. Because I know I like you. I'm telling you the truth, man.
That's it.
Heavy is the crown. Man. Nobody can understand, but it's get worse and it's more. It add more weight to your shoulder every fight.
Thing is,
every fight is bigger and bigger, and the criticism are worse, and the expectation are more and more and more. Keep the fire.
When taking a look at Adesanya's professional record, it's wild to think about the fact that he is just barely holding on as a betting favorite. Over the course of Adesanya's entire MMA career, he has lost only once. The lone loss came up a weight class at UFC 259, where Adesanya contested for the 205-pound title. On the other hand, Pereira is relatively inexperienced when it comes to MMA. The longtime kickboxer has continued to put on a display inside the octagon, recently picking up a sensational first-round knockout win over Sean Strickland earlier this year in a #1 contender bout. For a fighter who has been on a multi-year-long quest to chase Adesanya down and defeat him once again, the November 12th showdown will give him the opportunity to quickly capture UFC gold. And before we continue, make sure you give that like button some love and be sure to subscribe to the MMA Zone for all of the latest news. Gilbert Burns gives prediction for Leon Edwards' Kamaru Usman trilogy. The welterweight showdown between Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman doesn't currently have a set date. However, it has continued to dominate headlines since Edwards picked up the spectacular knockout win earlier this summer. The way former title challenger Gilbert Burns sees things, the rematch between the two will be an incredibly close affair. Although he was the former training partner and longtime friend of Kamaru Usman, Burns wants to see the best man win. During a recent interview with MMA Junkie, he gave his thoughts on the bout, explaining why he thinks the trilogy fight is either man's to win.
I just think it's going to be another close one, I think, especially if they go to London, it's going to be a tough one. I still think it's a 50-50 fight. Both guys get a chance, but in London, with that preparation, the mindset now, I think Leon might get the best, it's going to be a close one.
Burns is of course looking for a dance partner for his return fight. The former title challenger famously took part in a fight of the year contender with Khamzat Chimaev earlier this year, which he lost via decision. On the heels of the loss, Burns will now look to bounce back and return to the win column. When he's ready to return, he could very well find himself slated to fight Jorge Masvidal. With the welterweight division currently being as exciting as it is, we want to hear from you. How do you think the trilogy bout between Edwards and Usman plays out? And who do you want to see Burns return to the octagon against? Sound off in the comments down below. Now, for our breaking news story of the day, we have a UFC fighter pulling out of a fight. It was reported early today that Melsik Bakazarian was out of his fight with Joe Anderson Brito. Luckily, the UFC has replaced Melsik with Lucas Alexander and they're scheduled to fight on October 15th. Who do you think will win this fight? Next up, we have UFC fighter Conor McGregor showcasing an injury that happened on set while filming for Roadhouse. Do you think filming for this movie is going to delay Conor McGregor's return? Let us know in the comment section down below. Last up, Juliana Pena vows to reclaim title in Amanda Nunes trilogy. To close last year, Juliana Pena picked up one of the most spectacular wins in the history of women's mixed martial arts as she defeated Amanda Nunes. Over the course of 2 rounds, Pena continued to batter the champ before ultimately submitting Nunes late in the second to cement her place as a UFC champion. The following summer, the two women collided in the octagon once again at UFC 277, where Nunes put on an impressive display to reclaim the bantamweight title. Although the fight was a rather lopsided one, it didn't deter Pena from the ultimate goal of winning the title once again. During an Instagram video, Pena spoke about a potential trilogy fight, promising fans that when the pair square off in the octagon for the 3rd time, she won't miss. Everyone keeps asking me what's next. I'm getting my belt back, that's what's next. A trilogy with Amanda Nunes the fight to make. I did everything I said I was going to do in that first fight. I gave Amanda the immediate rematch within 6 months, and man, maybe I should have sat out for 2 years like she does. So far, there is no word yet as to when Nunes will look to defend the bantamweight championship. She could also very well decide to defend her featherweight title instead. With no word yet from the UFC on their plans for a trilogy bout with Pena, we turn to you. Do you want to see Pena and Nunes run things back once more? Or do you think that Pena needs to win another fight before getting a crack at the belt? Play matchmaker and give us your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thanks so much for joining us today. What do you make of what's going on in the fight world? Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all of the latest news from the MMA Zone. See you next time.